What's going on, guys? My name is Wade with Tech Daily, and in this video, we'll be doing a full comparison between the new Samsung Galaxy A31 and the Samsung Galaxy A51. Now, I think this is going to be a really interesting comparison because it may not seem like it at first, but these phones are surprisingly different. And I think there are a lot of factors that may influence you one way or another as far as which phone is right for you. The A51, of course, has been out for a while. I know a lot of people are already familiar with this device. And the A31, on the other hand, is the newest A-series phone that just launched. It replaces the A30 and A30s, of course. It certainly is an upgrade from those phones. But in regards to where it fits in line with the rest of the 2020 A-series devices, this is a very sort of unique phone with some interesting features and missing bits that I'll talk about in just a minute. So I won't waste any more time. Let's go ahead and see what each of these phones has to offer. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is the price. The A51, like I said, has been out for a while, a few months at least at this point, and it surprisingly has already come down from its original launch price. You can pick up a new A51 on Amazon right now for just under $280. So certainly a phone that I would classify as a budget device, and honestly a really good deal all things considered. With the A31, this phone just launched, and unfortunately pricing isn't too clear at the moment, but the Amazon listings have this phone selling for a little under $260. And actually, I suspect this device will go even lower than that in the coming weeks when more retailers get a hold of it and more carriers start offering it as well. Either way you look at it though, the A31 is going to be cheaper than the A51, but we're talking like $30 to $40 right now at best. So price, I don't think, is too much of a deciding factor. And by the way, if you are interested in getting one of these phones for yourself, or maybe just want to do some comparison shopping of your own, I'll have links to the cheapest Amazon listings for these phones down below in the video description. So just check down there so you don't miss out. Physically, at least at first glance, these phones appear to be almost identical, but there are actually a few key differences I do want to point out. In regards to the material and build quality, since these phones are from Samsung's A-series, they're made from that Glastic material, the hard, glossy plastic that's meant to mimic glass. Both phones have some chrome plastic accents around the sides and edges, and they also have a subtle rainbow effect and faint line design across the back that gives them some character. Overall, I do like the design of these phones. I don't think they look or even feel cheap at all, which is great. You'll know they're made of plastic when you pick them up, but in general, Samsung has done a nice job offering some good, high-quality, budget materials for their A-series devices. Something I think you'll notice about these phones is the body and form factor are actually almost identical, but everything is off by just a few millimeters in every direction. So technically, no, these phones don't share the same housing, and that also becomes apparent when we look at the displays. This, I think, is where you'll notice one of the first big differences between these phones. Obviously, the A51 received a refreshed design with the Infinity O camera cutout across the top and slim bezels all the way around, while the A31 is sort of stuck with last year's design. It has the Infinity U cutout notch and a bit thicker bottom chin down there that stands out a little. And this difference in design also means that technically the screen sizes are different too. The A51 offers a 6.5-inch display, while the A31 has a 6.4-inch screen, even though, like I said earlier, the form factor of these phones is almost identical. The difference, of course, comes from the A51's better use of space. It has an 87% screen-to-body ratio versus the 85% on the A31. And yeah, I'm sort of just nitpicking here at this point, but I did want to at least take a moment to point out these differences because the bottom line is just that the A51 actually did get a redesign, while the A31 did not. And that fresh new look on the A51 is actually something that might be important to some people. Taking a look around at everything else, since these are Samsung's A-series phones, after all, they're set up in an almost identical way. On one side, you have a SIM and SD card tray on both phones. On the other side, the volume and power buttons are in basically the same spot. And on the bottom, both phones have the same headphone jack, USB-C port for charging, and single downward firing external speaker. Around back, these phones both rock that relatively new square camera module with a quad lens setup, and I'm going to go more in depth with that in just a second. But before we do that, there are a couple other things I want to go over. In regards regards to the actual displays themselves, both of these phones offer a similar AMOLED panel at a 1080p resolution. Now, if we want to get very specific, I do believe the A51 may have a newer display since it is the Infinity O cutout and everything, but side by side, I don't see any real difference. The A51 doesn't look significantly better by any means, and really both these screens look great as they are. If you want to talk specifics, the 6.4-inch display on the smaller A31 is a 1080 by 2400 resolution and packs 411 pixels per inch, while the slightly larger A51 is actually still the same 1080 by 2400 resolution, but it packs a few less pixels per inch at 405. The difference with all that stuff though, it's not really important. The thing to focus on here is that with each of these phones, you're getting a bold and bright AMOLED panel on phones that sell for well under $300. On one hand, I do like the more modern screen setup on the A51. I think viewing content is a little nicer, but with the A31, you're still getting the same basic display anyway. Content looks the same. So at the end of the day, you aren't sacrificing anything by going with a less expensive device. Underneath the display on both phones, you'll see that Samsung did include a fingerprint sensor. As far as I can tell, one phone isn't any better or faster than the other when it comes to unlocking. They're both honestly just good, not great, and that's something I've talked about in my other A-series videos. Although I do like to complain about it, I will say that I am happy Samsung offers the extra unlocking method at least, and I personally like having it in addition to using Face Unlock. A couple other things about these phones worth mentioning: neither phone is water resistant or certified with any IP rating, neither phone offers wireless charging, and both phones have the same single mono speaker, and they both support the same 15-watt fast charging speeds. So if any of those features or extras were important to you, you'll need to choose an entirely different device. Speaking of the battery, this is actually one of the biggest differences between these two phones, surprisingly, but it's probably not in the way that you think. The A51 offers a pretty respectable 4,000 milliamp battery, but the A31 has a significantly larger 5,000 capacity one. This, I think, is a really strange choice, and it sort of makes the A31 a little more enticing. In my own experience so far, I'm actually getting better battery life on the A31 just by a couple of hours, and while it isn't much, I think it's an interesting perk, and I'm sort of curious as to why Samsung did this. My guess is that when we talk about some of the other missing features here in a moment, Samsung just decided to make up for those with a bigger battery. And honestly, if that's what you get, I might be okay with that. Inside, both these phones are powered by very different specs, and I'll sort of go over everything here and offer some of my thoughts. The A51 is the phone we know. It has Samsung's own Exynos 9611 chipset with the Mali G72 GPU and 4, 6, or 8 gigs of RAM, depending on the model you buy. These, I think, are solid specs across the board, especially for a phone at this price, and I know a lot of folks have praised the 9611 processor in particular. With the A31, Samsung took a pretty different route. This phone has the MediaTek Helio P65 processor, Mali G52 GPU, and either 4 or 6 gigs of RAM. Now, the P65 processor isn't new. We've seen it in a couple of phones over the last few months, but I think it's sort of one of the biggest unknowns here. In regards to performance, the phones are super close, which actually wasn't something I expected. I figured the A51 might be noticeably and consistently faster with launching apps and navigating through Android 10, but honestly, it seems almost too close to call. One thing people have pointed out is the extra power consumption from the P65 processor in the A31 that may drain the battery faster and perhaps degrade performance if you push it too hard. But at least right now, this isn't something I've experienced yet. In general, I'd say that both phones perform really well, but if I have to choose based solely on the specs, I think I'm going to go with the A51 for two reasons. One, I think the Exynos 9611 is a more well-known and reliable chipset, and two, I think looking ahead long-term, the internal specs for the A51 might allow it to have a longer lifespan than the A31. I think it'll perform better in the long run, and while both phones will get a few more years of software support, I'm banking on the A51 being a better long-term option. The area that Samsung focused a lot of their attention on with with their A series phones this year has been with the cameras, and I think their efforts have paid off. But at the same time, this is probably where the A31 lacks the most in features when compared to the A51. In regards to the specs, much of the 4-lens setup is actually the same. Both phones have a 5-megapixel macro camera for up-close pictures, a 5-megapixel depth sensor, and seemingly the same 48-megapixel main shooter. The only difference is in the wide-angle camera. The A31 gets the 8-megapixel lens, while the A51 has the 12-megapixel shooter. So at least on paper, these phones appear to be quite similar. But unfortunately, that's just not the case. For one, these phones will process the images and videos differently because they have different internal specs. I think at the end of the day, the Exynos 9611 on the A51 is going to do a better job than what's inside the A31. Also, the A31 actually completely lacks some software features and shooting modes. For example, night mode is not available on this phone. There's also no slow motion video of any kind. And the A31 does not support 4K video recording at all. This is all pretty surprising to me, but I think Samsung just had to do something to differentiate these phones, and this is where they decided to take some features away. For some folks, I realize that's not a big deal, but for others, those missing camera modes might be the deciding factor. Up front, we also have a big difference in selfie cameras too. The A31 has a 20-megapixel shooter, while the A51 has a much better 32-megapixel lens. The A51 can also shoot 4K video up front, while once again, the A31 cannot. All in all, if pictures and video capabilities are important to you, the A51 just simply offers more. And just so you guys know, I will have a dedicated camera comparison video so you can get some real-world side-by-side shots. Just go ahead and check out the channel to see if that video is up already. So all in all, I do think these are both really good phones. I liked the A51 from the moment it launched, and I was excited to see what the A31 could offer. While its form factor, display, and other small features are either identical or at least comparable to the A51, the less reliable internal specs and tons of missing camera features on the A31 make it a tough sell in this case. The extra battery life might help a bit, and saving 30 or 40 bucks is cool, but in the end, I think I'm going with the A51. It just offers a lot more for not a whole lot of extra money, and that's the one thing I'd consider if you're making this choice. But what do you guys think? Which of these phones would you go with, the A51 or the A31? Let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to know your thoughts, of course. Hopefully you guys did enjoy this video though. Be sure to follow Tech Daily on Twitter and subscribe to the Tech Daily YouTube channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys later.